ladies and gentlemen, Scott Shigeoka.
Is this what it feels like to get on the Price is Right stage too? This is amazing. So after the 2016 presidential elections, I packed up everything into my tiny and very old Toyota Prius, which I lovingly named Astro because I took out the back seats and installed a bed in it and then layered everything with AstroTurf. And it was like my hashtag van life moment, but with a lot less height clearance. And what was driving me to do this was not some like digital nomad lifestyle. I wasn't going off to the beach or to the mountains. Instead, I was putting my sights on something very different. I was going to a Republican rally. I was meeting millennials who were living with Catholic nuns. I went to places where I met people and encountered people who were very different from me. Someone who identifies as Asian, as progressive, who's grown up in Hawaii and has lived for most of my adult life in the San Francisco Bay Area. I wanted to be driven by my curiosity instead. And I learned so much about this from my journey. And I was driven by this exploration of, is there a way that our country could come back together? Is there a way that we could heal in our families? Is there a way that we could bridge our differences without flattening what makes us different? And I realized there's something that we all have, every single person in this room and everyone watching online, that we are born with, that can help us do just that. And that is our curiosity. I'm Scott Shigeoka, and I'm obsessed with curiosity, so much so that I wrote a whole book on it. I research it. I live and breathe it. Curiosity is defined as the desire to know. And it's something that we have thanks to our ancestors who needed someone in the group to be curious, to look for food or for water, to build tools. It's something that's been passed down to us. And for anyone who's around kiddos, you can really see it in their eyes. It gives you this wonder when you see them looking at new things in the world. Even when they babble, they're like, ah, wah. That's them getting curious about their vocal anatomy. That's how they develop language and communication. It's really a building block to how we learn. And curiosity is something that doesn't just stop when we're kids. It's something that we continue to nurture over our lifetime. When we get interested in a topic, we listen to podcasts, we read books, we search things on Wikipedia. That's how we fulfill this intellectual curiosity. But curiosity is more than just something that lives in our mind. It's actually something that we can bring down into our heart. And I call that heart-centered curiosity. It's how we can actually use this force to connect more meaningfully with one another, how we can use curiosity as a way to transform ourselves. And this heart-centered curiosity is what allows us to really see and hear people and value them and their stories and what makes them who they are. Heart-centered curiosity lives on the spectrum. And on one end, you have shallow curiosity, and on the other, you have deep curiosity. And a lot of us start our conversations and our relationships on the shallow end. You know, we'll ask questions like, what's your name? What do you do for work? Where do you live? This gives us some bits of information of who this person is, but it's only just the surface. We don't yet know the full picture of this person in front of us. But as we slide down the spectrum towards the deep end, we start to ask a different kind of question. Instead of, what's your name? We might ask, what's the story of your name? Because from that question, we learn the culture and the context and who named them and their relationship to their name and whether the name they have even represents the identities they hold in this world. Instead of, what is it you do for work? We might ask, what's really exciting you right now? What's pissing you off right now at your job? What are you getting really curious about? Instead of asking, where do you live? You might ask, what does home mean to you? What does it look like? What does it feel like? This deep curiosity allows us to dive beneath the surface. It allows us to really see the person in front of us. I like to say you penetrate the layers of a person and you reach their soul. Soul's meeting, that is deep curiosity. And the research backs this up too. We know that when you use curiosity with strangers, you increase intimacy and closeness with them. Even when you use it with loved ones, your partners, your children, your family, colleagues, curiosity strengthens and fortifies the relationship you have. Even when you disagree with one another, you have a different idea, perspective, belief, whether it's at a rally or in the boardroom, curiosity can reduce hostility and increase understanding. It's such a powerful, powerful force. So how do we practice it? How do we practice curiosity? Well, the first thing to remember is that it's a muscle, and it's something that can be strengthened over time and through practice. And there's 3 things that I want to share with you all on how to strengthen this muscle. The first is to remember that curiosity has multiple directions. So there's inward curiosity, where I get curious about myself, my emotions, my stories, my meaning and purpose in this life. I do this a lot in therapy, for anyone else who does therapy. So glad therapy is sexy now. Inward curiosity is that inner exploration. Then there's outward curiosity. That's all about how do we get curious about the people around us and the world around us. It's much of what I've been talking about. It's how do we understand the people we see every day or the people that we disagree with the most. And then there is the beyond. And that's about how do we get curious about what's beyond the physical realm. And for some of us, that might be God. That might be the divine, consciousness. For others, it might be how do I get curious about those I've lost, those who have died? How do I maintain my connection and my curiosity towards them? How do I get curious about those who are not yet born? What is the world and the planet they will inherit 7 generations from now? So that's the first thing. Curiosity has multiple directions. The second thing is that curiosity is earned, it is not deserved. So you might have curiosities about someone's hair, about their culture, about whether they're pregnant or not. Does not mean you're entitled to that information, okay? Curiosity is earned, it is not deserved. In other words, you need to have that fundamental trust and that relationship that's built because we have to respect people's boundaries. Boundaries of privacy, of confidentiality. You know, I don't go to a TEDx conference and say, hey, what's the deepest childhood trauma you've ever experienced in your entire life? That's my opener, right? You want to build towards that. I mean, I might be down to answer that, but you know, you want to level set for comfort. And then the third piece that I wanted to let you all know about on how to strengthen this muscle is curiosity is contagious. It's infectious. It is so, so great to know because we all have people around us who we wish were a little bit more curious. And one way that we can do that is by asking questions and admitting we have limitations to our knowledge and exploring. Being curious models that behavior for the people around us, whether that's our children or our partner at home or our teams at work. And I really, really felt this when I went to that first Republican rally. You know, dressed fabulously. I walked up to this guy in line and I said, hey, I've heard a lot about people that are voting for the presidential candidate that we are here for, but I'm not voting for him. But I get a lot of different stories about who you are from the media and from other people. And I know as a storyteller, the best way to get a story is actually to go to the source and to actually talk to people and ask them questions. So that's what I'm here to do. I want to better understand you, and I hope we're going to wait for 5 hours before we get into the arena. Would you be open to having a conversation? And he looked at me kind of with wide eyes, and he told me that usually when people like me come up to him, it's not that kind of an approach. He's usually getting attacked or canceled. And we went into a conversation about stories where he felt othered. He did not feel like he belonged. from some of his family members, from some of his girlfriend's friends. They knew this one thing about him, who he was voting for, and they casted him aside. And he said, because curiosity is contagious, have you ever felt that? And I said, yeah, I have. And I shared my own perspective as someone who is in a queer body moving through this country. That just weeks before I'm meeting you, I was physically threatened because of my sexuality. That still exists today in our country, and I feel othered because people see this one thing about me and assume that's everything about me. But just like you, I'm so much more than that. There's so many other identities and ideologies that make me the person I am today. And that's what deep curiosity does. That moment, it illustrates that we can find our common humanity and our shared humanity. That, yes, we might not agree on who we're going to be voting for in that presidential election, but we can see each other and begin to understand one another and what makes us different. Instead of canceling as an impulse, we connect. Instead of leaning on judgment, we get curious. And really what I think happened in that conversation is that it was an expression of love. You know, love is a verb, right? So the way that we can do it is through our curiosity. When we are curious about our children, about our neighbor, about our partner, what we're really doing is we're expressing love to them. We're saying, I see you, I hear you, and you matter, and you belong here. So as you move through this world and through this life, I hope that just like I felt on that road trip, you feel that curiosity is your companion and you see it as your pathway to love. Thank you. Thank you.